Welcome back to the Sunday's Coming podcast, everybody. I'm here with Kaleb.
Hello, everybody.
Always. And in case you forgot, I'm also Kaleb.
Yes.
Very confusing, I know.
Two of you.
But here we have not Kaleb.
Yes.
Thankfully.
Yes.
I was going to introduce myself as Kaleb.
We haven't had a Kaleb on the podcast yet.
God,
we need to get
crazy.
one. That would be great.
3 Kalebs.
We need
It would
to do
break. The internet
but
would break.
It's probably the guest today is better than any Kaleb we could have.
That's right,
Sheldon
man.
Andrus, who's here all the way from Cleveland.
The big city.
That's right.
The big city of Cleveland.
That's
Welcome.
right.
I'm in
Cleveland. So are you into
Chicago.
Cleveland sports?
I'm into Shedeur Sanders and
Okay.
cheering him on.
Okay.
And that's about it.
Okay.
Don't tell anybody that, though. That's
Okay.
got to stay only on this podcast.
Okay.
Don't get out of there.
What is the best Cleveland sports team right now?
The best Cleveland sports team, I'm going to withhold comment because I would be jeopardizing relationships.
yeah, very
across the
good.
country. I have to be neutral here.
Wow.
They're all great.
Okay.
Hey, man.
They're all
That's a very, very politically correct
Yeah,
answer.
Right down the middle.
Okay.
Don't call me a moderate.
Okay. So will this podcast be interesting or all your answers going to be so
just
safe?
right in the middle.
I don't know.
No, that's probably the safest part of this whole
Okay,
conversation.
great. I like
So
it.
Don't,
We gotta
don't
get
log
spicy.
off.
Yeah, man.
Well, Sheldon, thanks for being on here. Excited to dig in. If people have been listening for a while, you kind of know that we have guests from all over the different corners of church world, creative, service production, pastoral, all that kind of stuff. And we kind of unpack their story, like what led them to the ministry work they're doing now. And it's amazing how much insight and encouragement and challenge we can get out of just each person's unique experience. So we're excited to hear about yours today.
Incredibly honored to be here. Thank you all so much for having me. And yeah, I'm looking forward to a good conversation.
Yeah,
It's gonna be good.
Yeah, maybe walk us through a little bit, like in a sort of condensed version, right? Like, how did you get started in church? What led you to even show up at a church and be like in charge of something?
Yeah.
Or they gave you a
That's crazy.
job.
They let me
you do
do it.
something.
They let me do it.
I'll tell you, my first church responsibility maybe was pushing record on the cassette deck.
Hey,
In the sound booth to record the sermon on cassette. So
we might have been at the same church.
yeah, was yours also the cassette recording job?
I got to hit the cassette recorder.
Nice.
And then I got upgraded to the overhead projector.
Oh, nice.
Hey, yo, I had the file folders.
That's more
with the
pressure, though. You gotta,
transparencies.
like, have the
baby, it was a whole
flipping
thing.
skills.
Like,
That's
but right before PowerPoint came out, it was like you had to have professional level overhead projector
Like, you know how
skills.
now
could scroll.
you got to coach your volunteers like on ProPresenter, like
yeah,
lead
yeah.
the
How to
phrase
get-
a little bit.
They
It was
do.
like another level.
It was a whole nother level.
with the
muscle. It was physical labor
Yeah.
back then. Nobody remembers that.
We should do
anymore.
like a contest sometime. Maybe like a philo or something. Be like, hey, your best ProPresenter operator, they got to come up
They
here.
got to do it on an
and they got to
overhead
do it on
slide.
an overhead,
Switch.
dude.
Switch,
like that a
especially
lot.
when it's a full page and you gotta like scroll. Oh man,
You can't lose track. You
That
got
was
to
me.
keep the
That was
line.
me. You gotta- that was
Amazing.
me. It was so good.
All right. Well, so tell us, what was your sort of start out in church ministry?
You know, I tell this story a lot, and so if these jokes sound rehearsed, they absolutely are. I say all the time that I came out of my mom's womb speaking in tongues. I'm a church kid with an entire Pentecostal charismatic background and all the fun stuff that comes along with that, all the trauma that comes along with that. And so I grew up in the local church. Family was deeply entrenched in leadership and serving, and church was an absolute centrality to kind of our development, who we are and who we were as a family. And that's not just my parents, it's my grandparents. Like, it's just kind of, I have come from a very strong lineage of a faith family. So super honored about that. So grew up in church. It wasn't until about 13 or 14 where I was like, maybe I should have a relationship with this Jesus we're all singing and talking about. Because I really like church. Like, I like the sport of church, right? I fell in love with the sport of church. And so around 13, I gave my life to Jesus and started to adopt my own, I think, understanding of who he was and what the presence of God did to my own personal life. And it's a whole nother story, which I won't get into. And so, but at the same time, coming up in that age, around 13, stepped into the church leadership, right? Literally hanging out with the production guys in the production booth, letting me unmute the mic, if watching me to make sure I unmuted it. This is back during the big Allen and Heath analog desk days, right? Where we could, you can't, everybody can't reach both sides of the console. So it's like, no, here's your mute bank, you hit it when the choir walks off the stage. And I grew up in a megachurch, right? So my entire majority of my kind of worldview at the time was all church is significant production lift from audio to lighting, sound. And we're talking about, I'm 38, so this would have been the 90s, late 90s, right? And so that became the formulation of my kind of childhood is I went to school and we went to church, like literally, like that was kind of my thing. And I loved it. Youth ministry, serving in the church, working in the church. Went to college, got a degree in communications, also still leading in church even while in college. And then stepped out of college and was like, okay, so what do I do, Lord? Am I going to ministry full time? Am I going to go in the marketplace? And God led me to the marketplace. And so I worked in marketing and advertising for, in and around marketing and advertising, a couple different stops in there for like the first 13 years of my career.
Wow.
And all while serving my church. I say all the time, I worked 9 to 5 and was at the church 5 to 9, but never actually 9, 5 to whatever. Really met my wife at church. We've been married now 10 years. Like that, it's just been a part of my life. In 2020, I get a phone call from a friend of mine who connects me with a great pastor who's just merged 2 churches in Maryland.
Okay.
And, we're pandemic times, he's building out his new executive team now that he's merged these 2 churches. And he calls me. I still to this day don't know how how he found out about me other than the fact that this person was like, you should meet Sheldon. And so we end up on a call. He says, hey, you should come fly out and meet us. My wife and I fly out to Maryland. We fall in love with this beautiful church called Union Church, Stephen Chandler. And we moved to Maryland. I become his executive pastor of experience, which is essentially all the production, creative, worship, all the pieces of, I say all the time, it's all the pieces you see. And so did that. The church went, this was my PhD. This was, I say all the time, I got a bachelor's degree and a master's degree from traditional school. And this was my PhD in leadership. The church, because of kind of where it sat in the arc of history and the pandemic and growth and all the things, when I got there, it was 2 campuses that had merged together. On a good Sunday, it was maybe 12 to 1,500 people, which was great in 2020. Like we're talking about November of 2020, right? When no one's back yet, quote unquote, in church. From November of 2020 to probably that same point in 2024, the church goes from that 1,200 mark to 15,000 plus people in attendance. We launched another 6 campuses during that time. Wow. It was actual like fire. And I don't mean fire isn't, well, no, it was both. It was definitely both. It was fire. It was just in every way, just gasoline on what the mission was. I think that was my PhD in church leadership, church understanding, church science, all the things that come along with working at a phenomenally fast-growing church. In 2024, that church was named, and I do the big air quotes, named the fastest-growing church in America.
Wow.
And, people talk about that list all the time. We can have our own conversation about that list, but I think there was some merit to it because I felt every bit of that. And it wasn't just me, it was a whole leadership team. Left, transition out of there, and went to another phenomenal church in Cleveland, the Word Church, which in the Black culture, when you talk about multi-site church in America, you can't not talk about the Word Church and Dr. Ari Vernon. He's like progenitor of this early on. I'm talking about early 2000s. He's talking about, I got multiple campuses. Black people are like, what's a campus? A college campus? Like, you got colleges? No, no, church campuses. Video preaching, but this is when they were running VHS, running DVDs between campuses. Like, he was in that vein, old school. So got to work with him for a little bit, and it was really cool. And then after like having my PhD and what I call my PhD plus, working with Dr. Vernon, I really just felt this inkling to help more churches, kind of not distant from you guys' mission of like really trying to be deeply influential, but also like clear the way, just trying to give good advice. You don't have to make those same mistakes that everyone else is making. Let me give you speed. And so became a full-time church consultant and started a firm based around this idea of helping churches with systems and strategies and structure to help them see the growth that they're literally so earnestly praying for. And it has just been a wild ride. We work with some of the incredibly influential churches. We work with a bunch of church planters and church startups, and a lot of our work focuses around building out systems. The word system is just it's like the watchword of, I think, 2026 in church. And so what are systems and how do we build them and which ones are necessary and then which ones are tailor-made to us and not adopting other people's systems? That's the thing, right? It's like, we want elevation systems, but I'm like, you're a Black Kojic church. I don't think those two things go together. So let's talk about how we like make your own version. There's a version of systems for you or any version of that. We want a specific worship system. It's like, well, that's not it's not really your armor there, David, like be careful. And so we're having a lot of fun just working through, helping lots of pastors and churches and really just seeing the hand of God work through us, both influence-wise, but really, I think I'm crazy. I say the church is in a revival right now. I think the demographics and the data absolutely point to the idea that the church is in a growth spurt. but with all of those growth spurts, which if you know history, you can mark them from Jesus movement, from Azusa Street to Jesus movement. And I just jumped decades there. We're in one of those right now. And so how do we steward it well? How do we make sure that we're not just swelling, but actually discipling? And having all those conversations literally every day.
Yeah, that's cool, man.
That was a short version.
No, that's great. That's great. I'm sure we'll kind of backtrack sometimes and get into some more of that. But I'm curious. So you've been doing the church consulting thing and having all these diverse conversations with different people in different contexts and different sizes and styles of churches, right? One of the things you do for churches, you do a church audit.
I do.
Right?
I love those.
Yep. Church audit,
People are like
secret shopper for churches kind of thing, right? Yeah, right. So here's what I'm curious on that front, like. Every church thinks that they are one of a kind.
Of course.
Right?
And they are.
They are.
They are.
And also, I'll bet you could name they're not at the same time, right? So just real quick, like I want to dig into that slightly because I think those things, the churches that are listening that also kind of feel like they're unique, which they are also going to struggle in some non-unique problems that every church faces, right? So maybe kind of just as deep as you want to go, what are some of the things that you see as constants across all the different churches that you're working with?
Oh, bro, this is such a great question. Okay, so I say all the time that as long as God's church is a uniquely human endeavor, it's going to have a similarity in problems because there's really no difference between us. As much as we want there to be all these drastic differences between us, we're really not. We default to the same things. And so I often, when I have these post-audit conversations with pastors, I'm like, hey, I'm going to say some things, but it's not because I'm trying to get you to be like another church. It's because this is the same problem that I'm seeing pretty consistently. And so you should rest assured, right? Because if you're having the same problem everybody else is having, then great. Then that means you're in the right space. It's when you're having problems that no one else is having that I'm concerned. Like, hey, no one's having that problem, but you got to stop. That's when it should jar us a little bit. Okay, common things I'm seeing. One, I think. This is a big one, but I'm going to try to boil it down to simplicity. Is I am seeing, because the audit is specifically about the weekend experience, it's having a really hard conversation on what is the point of a weekend experience, both biblically, which we can talk about that, but also missionally, right? I say this all the time. Sundays can't be everything. They've got to be they got to be specific things. It has to, and I'll tell you what those are because I don't know, the listeners are like, okay, well, then what are they? I think it's to gather the believer and to give movement to the unbeliever, right? And I don't think those things are watch this, it's 100% of both, right? So it's not like, well, it should be more seeker friendly than it should be, like that's where that conversation typically lands. I'm saying you can do both. They can coexist in the same world. But what I find is, especially in the churches that I'm visiting, there is a disproportionate desire to be more inward than outward, right? And what does that sound like? I'll go to your church and it will be 30 to 45 minutes before you've greeted the guest, right? Like those are watchwords for me. It's like, hey, when are you going to talk to the person who's never been here before? There's a ton of inside language, right? Hey, come to 180 and then let's go to the retreat and then I'll meet you at She Said and then we'll have a Fight Club. It's like, okay, wait. And then you find out all those were like youth ministries. It's like, wait, I didn't know what that, I don't know. Or go to Treehouse. What is Treehouse for the kids? Is that for the adults? And you find that that's the men's ministry. Okay, this is a lot. How about we speak a bit more plain, not to say we can't be unique, but I find Sundays have become these catch-alls for everything. We want Sunday to be a prayer service, a worship service, a prophetic service. I'm going to preach for 50 minutes. We're going to have some testimony. Like, it's cool. I get it. But I do think in the culture we're living in, our culture is incredibly time sensitive, right? We have shortened our attention spans due to these digital devices that we're all tethered to. And so the church has to make a decision, which I think at every intersection in culture, the church makes a decision to say, hey, how do we create an experience on Sunday that is magnetic, that moves people towards Jesus, but also does not monopolize their day, because we have 6 other days a week that we can engage with them in a myriad of forms. I think that's one. So it's just the number one thing. One thing I see a lot is just a lot happening on Sunday morning. I get in trouble because I say, I don't think you need to be in church more than 90 minutes on a Sunday. I'll die on that hill. And that's not a hill of Sheldon's preference. I think that is more of a sociological understanding of human behavior, especially American human behavior. Now, if we took this whole conversation, went to the west coast of Africa, we could say, hey, in Nigeria, 3.5 hour long service, that's the expectation.
You're working in the context
100%.
that you are in.
And very few things in American culture last more than 90 minutes. They're just, you can't literally, other than a concert or a sporting event, there's not, which we don't build our weeks around. You know what I'm saying? There's very few things that happen more than 90 minutes. You don't work out more than 90 minutes. You don't like, you know what I'm saying? You don't have meetings for more than 90 minutes. So sitting still in a room for more than 90 minutes becomes a little bit of a challenge, especially for, all of us who are struggling with our ADHD. And so 90 minutes, and then I get in trouble because then I say, in that 90 minutes, worship doesn't need to be any more than 24 minutes, because what are we really doing? Like, if once there's a process to worship, once we get to the place of, the holies of holies, which is what the Bible instructs us to do, we've done our job. Now let's get into the word, let's give a next step, and let's go home and do it again next week. So that's number one, too much happening in the service. Number two is probably something I just tangentially bumped into. I find a lot of church services, when I audit them and I'm sitting in their room, man, worship was powerful. The presence of God was in the room. The message was amazing. Cool announcement video, bro. Like, I love your QR code, but no one told me what to do next. Or they told me a bunch of things to do next. They told me, stop by the thing in the lobby, scan the QR code, fill out the Connect card, stop by the party with the pastor, and come back on Tuesday for our new members night. It's like, okay, wow. And I
How
say,
do I know which one is for me?
For me, right?
Yeah.
And I think the conversation that I'm having, and I hope I sound like a broken record, is discipleship has to be made simple. The entryway into discipleship should not be a series of choices. It should be a clean, like Jesus told his disciples, leave your stuff, follow me. It should not be a, like, let me tell you the 6 ways to leave your stuff. Like, it should just be a simple call to action that is repetitive, that is obvious. I say all the time, you wouldn't go to, if you pulled up to a house for the first time and it had 6 equal size front doors, you wouldn't go into it. You kind of freak out. You'd be like, something's off about that house. That's what our churches sound like. This is a trick. What's on the other side of that? Who in their right mind designed it that way? You're standing outside looking around like the Frankenstein house. But if you think about your church service and the calls to action that you're having, that's what it sounds like. This is important. This is important. This is a trick. And so what do people do? I say this all the time. When people have too many options, they freeze.
Correct.
It doesn't mean they don't move at all. They just freeze first, right?
It doesn't mean they don't want to.
100%.
They might actually want to. They just
1000%.
feel a little bit unsettled. Like, wait a second.
Period. And
Well,
so-
you were talking earlier about your
good.
involvement in in the marketing world, and what you're just describing makes me think of like the sort of framework and practice of very specific avatars to your marketing, right?
Come on.
Who are we creating this piece of content for?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So when you're doing an announcement or planning a program, whether it's the party with the pastor or the Tuesday night thing,
Who's
how
that
do you
for?
define it in a way
Yes.
that makes them feel like, yes, that's me?
Yes,
Right?
so good. Rick Warren calls that avatar Saddleback Sam, right? When he's thinking about, hey, who is Saddleback for? He designs his entire avatar, and then he builds the programming of the church around him. Not to say that that's the only important person, but to say, if I get Saddleback Sam, I then also get his wife, his kids, his coworkers, his barber. It's the whole ecosystem around him.
And I think too, as you're describing that, maybe somebody hears that and they actually don't like the idea of focusing their whole church ministry around
I know
a
it's
person.
crazy because Jesus did it. Go ahead.
But
Leave that alone.
even if you don't go that far, at least you could have it per program or announcement or something. So at least there's some specificity to how you're communicating the thing.
I do agree. I think one of the things I learned and I gleaned while working at Union, and I'll always say when I'm stealing from Stephen Chandler, here I am, stealing from Stephen Chandler, and that is everything needs to pass a who cares test. Like every time we talk about something happening at our church, there's a tendency in church communication specifically, and here goes my marketing background just coming into this conversation in full bright color, is to say, hey, look at how cool we are because we're doing this thing, and failing to apply it to a person's real pain or real issue, or why does this matter to your kids? Why does youth night matter to you? It's not a hangout. Like, we're trying to ensure that your kids have a biblical worldview. If you can start to talk, and you have to be careful because you can start to sound kind of grand and maybe even kind of arrogant in that conversation. But I think what is missing in the majority of those communication points, especially when talking about a Sunday next step or first step is what I call it, is why does this matter, right? Why are we telling you to do this? It's not a form or a function. There's a life that God is calling you to, and it goes through this very singular door. You don't have to wonder where it is. It happens right here every Sunday or whatever that is. The design part is a open conversation. But yeah, I think there's a desire to be singular and the call to action on Sunday. And I know there's a theologian listening to me right now. He's like, he's not talking about salvation. I'm saying after salvation, right? We're saying, yes, Sundays produce salvation. Absolutely. Now what? Because discipleship it begins at salvation. That's not the totality.
And everybody's journey towards discipleship is going to look different based on where they are at or where they're starting from, or whatever.
1,000%. Yeah. I think those are two. Those are two, probably two of the most consistent conversations I'm having is, hey, too much happening here on Sunday, which is creating this sort of feeling of, I don't want to say confusion, but just not clarity. Yeah. And then second of all, I don't know what to do to come into your world. I love it here. This is amazing. My kids loved it. My husband loved it. My wife loved it. Now, what do you want us to do?
Yeah. I was thinking of, as you were saying that, a study that my pastor was telling in some sermon illustration. I think it was of like a jelly or a jam company. And they were like basically trying to figure out how do we push people to buy and how are they deciding to do this? So they basically went into a supermarket and they put an astronomical amount of jams and jellies and all these different things on the wall. And basically what they found was people, the percentage of people that bought anything went down drastically because they were like, there's too much to choose from. It's like going on Netflix and you're like, oh, my wife and I want to watch something tonight, and we're scrolling and scrolling. We're like, we can't find anything. Let's just go to bed.
More time scrolling through the show
100%.
watching them.
Yes, so and you're like, I'm too tired to even decide, so I'm just going to go to bed instead. Yeah. And then as soon as that company said, hey, we're only going to put 4. We're going to do strawberry, grape, raspberry, and who knows what else. And then like it was, I don't know, 60, 70% higher than what it was previously. And so like them just realizing like, man, we have to provide more clear boundaries for people, because when we give them all of the options, they will just get overwhelmed and not decide. And I think we do that often in ministry and in church, especially in the weekend experience, and thinking about that. And then the other thing I was thinking about as you were saying that was like, I think a lot of churches don't love the idea of that personal avatar of their customer because it feels exclusive to them.
Or it feels businessy.
It feels corporate-y. It feels like non-ministry.
You just called it just now. You said the avatar of their customer, and they're like,
oh, exactly. And like, in a corporate world, business outside of the church is normal language that we would use. But it feels exclusive, and you go, well, why don't
it feels transactional or whatever.
Yep. Yeah. But there is a lot of truth to being able to look at that and go, even like being on site at a multi-site church, and I would have a campus an hour away from our main broadcast site that was so different as far as culture, the personality, the people that lived in that area closer to the city of Chicago than where we were super far out in the burbs. We're like, oh, this is very different, and how are we catering, and is that campus pastor, worship pastor, building their service to help impact their community, even though it's probably a little bit different than ours. And so I think it's important for churches to view that and be okay with like looking within their congregation and going, what is the culture? What are they?
I think it's so interesting how we can... God, this is so funny. Everyone who knows me and who's watching me on this podcast with some foreknowledge of me is going to laugh, because here's the typical space I don't occupy. Is to say, I think we got to have a conversation that 60% of the New Testament is absolutely avatared. Paul's not writing to everyone. He's specifically saying, hey, Philippian church, we got to deal with these specific problems in your specific language and context, which is why you have to read the Bible through that context and lens of He's not talking to an American in 2026. Yes. He's talking to a very specific group of people. And the reason they're so deeply attached to him is because he's speaking their language, speaking to their cultural nuance, their specific problem or challenge. And I think we are there. Steve Jobs, watch this, I'm getting right out of the Bible, back to corporate. Steve Jobs says, if you want to make an average product, make it for the average person. That's not unlike our ministry. I believe that churches should occupy specific parts of the kingdom of God, right? There should be a church who absolutely hangs their hat on being the outreach church. There should be a church that absolutely hangs their hat on being the presence-driven church. There should absolutely be a church that's like, hey, we got kids on lock. And watch this, if we stop competing with each other, family in our city should be able, this is dangerous, should be able to experience all of those without feeling like they're somehow jeopardized. Now, I know the chat's literally going insane right now. Absolutely not. These are my people. You can't. But the kingdom of God is not it is not your specific church. It is the church of Jesus Christ. And the Bible is very clear that there are different parts that are all fit together to create the body of Christ. And so I think this whole idea of being an avatar, being too corporate, I just think we should say, hey, Paul, I know America's long overdue for a letter, but can you write us one so we can see that you specifically, that God specifically speaks to his people through a very specific way. And there's nothing wrong with choosing a people group and going radically after them.
Well, the reason that, your secular marketing research is arriving at these conclusions has nothing to do with this sort of ministry versus secular business divide. It's just they are good students of humanity.
It's great.
Like they wouldn't do it.
100%.
They wouldn't do like you just described the study and like their decisions around like placing product. Like they wouldn't do that if it didn't work.
Yeah,
correct.
And why does it work? It's not because they're doing something secular and we're doing something biblical or Christian. Like that's just how people respond because we're people. So the same dynamics. You talk about like the 90-minute attention span that applies to a church service, or it could apply to a TV show. Like it's the same. Like the same thing, right?
Yes. Yeah.
When it comes to because it's not about the content. It's about where's the person receiving it at, and you have to just be honest. It doesn't help you to be not honest about where your audience is.
Yeah. There's this weird. I write about this in the book. There's this weird desire for leaders of churches to push back against culture in the most unnecessary of ways, right? It's, if you don't have a long attention span, you're going to learn one at church, and if you don't know how to sing for 45 minutes, you're going to learn that church, and that's literally not the makeup of the New Testament church,
I love
right?
that. Pushing back against culture in the most unnecessary
is this the place you're going to die on a hill?
So
this is the hill we're going to die on today, and simultaneously push away people who are desiring to be a part of your community because you chose this one. I talk about this a lot. So in the book, one of the things, Sunday by Design, one of the things we talk about is this idea of spirit versus structure, and debunking the idea that they're antithetical to each other, right? You need them both. They coincide together. God doesn't do miracles without a plan. He always has a plan, right? He tells the woman with the issue of blood, like, hey, you touch me, virtue. Like, there's always a system. Hey, he tells the young man with the 2 fish and the 5 loaves, hey, do this, sit them in groups of 10. Like, it's not just miraculous. It is structured. And so I say that to say, we find people I find pastors and leaders specifically choosing to die on the hill of, well, we're going to be spirit led and we're just going to let God do his thing. And it's just like, well, that's not helpful to everyone, right? Because we need structure in order for this to make sense. And so, I guess the short story I'm going towards in that thought is there's a real pushback that I'm sensing, and it's like, guys, why are we choosing that to be the battle, right? If people if the culture says, hey, I can take 90 minutes before I start to lose my steam of attention, give them the most action-packed, power-soaked 75 minutes, and say, hey, this was great, right? Do me a favor, go out and tell 3 other people about how powerful this was and bring them back here next Sunday and we'll do the exact same thing again. You know what I'm saying? It's like, but no, it's like, no, I'm going to do 3 hours because God deserves your time. And it's like, no one's arguing that God doesn't deserve our time. We don't want to give it to you. Okay, I got to get out of there. That's the difference.
Let's go.
Because somewhere in there you thought you were the same, and you're not.
That's right. Well,
it's like.
So to build on that,
this is so dangerous talk. It's terrifying.
We were just talking about this with a church the other day around. You probably see this in your work where churches are doing like weekends off, or they'll call them different things, Sabbath Sundays or things like that, right?
Yep.
And you see people either have a really sigh of relief around that idea, or a really resistant.
I'm that. Sorry, that's my hill to die on. Okay,
the resistant. Which one? Which one?
I am the resistant. I'm resistant. Why are you canceling church?
Yeah, right. But
what are you doing?
So here's the thing. Unpack that for us, because is that based on something that has been enculturated in you based on your past, or do you think that
this is my hill to die on? So, we all got them.
Or do you think that's something that you're actually unlearning?
Yeah.
Oh, this really are you unlearning that instinct that you have?
I went. So this past
you're now in therapy.
Yeah, come on. I'm an enjoyer of the therapy sessions. This past November, is the Sunday after Thanksgiving, I saw this massive groundswell of Sabbath Sundays, and I took to the internet the way I typically do. Those of you who follow me on Instagram or maybe landed here because of that, you'll know I'll pick a topic, not for the sake of, I just want to present some things. I'm not trying to argue, I just want to unearth some things. And I said, it's not that I mind the Church of Jesus taking a break, although I do. I think of church like the emergency room. it has to remain open because especially the Sunday after Thanksgiving, it's so kind of detached from reality of sometimes this is the only community people have. Sometimes this is the healthiest family people have. Sometimes it's the only time their kids get to interact with other same saved, Christian worldview kids. And so to say, hey, well, it's Sunday after Thanksgiving, we're all tired, let's just take it off, is to discount the fact that every Sunday someone's coming to your church in need of an encounter with God. And so I don't inherently advocate taking Sundays at carte blanche off. I took issue with calling it a Sabbath Sunday because the idea is the Sabbath is centered around the presence of God and the gathering of believers. So it's not a Sabbath Sunday. Call it vacation, call it dream team off Sunday, call it, hey, it's attendance is going to be low, so I'm going to go to the beach with my wife this weekend because I can't take a break any other time because you'll stop giving. Okay, sorry. I say that to say, call it that, but let's not equate the idea of Sabbathing with not coming to church because I think that's literally working against the culture we're trying to build where we're saying, no, we want you to create your Sabbath around the house of God, which is obviously so common in all other, in other faiths where when we say Sabbath rest, we're talking about centering it around the house of God. So I take issue with the idea of Sabbathing from church. I don't think those two things are antithetical. It's like working out, getting fit, not at the gym. It's like, okay, well, how do they go together, all right? And you say, no, I can get fit at home. It's like, can you?
Well, I think that the conversation that drives those, like what you said a minute ago, where people want to encounter God or they're pursuing something, but maybe they're just not interested in you.
That's
right. So it's like, okay,
yes.
Is that something where, hey, they're going to experience rest, the presence of God, community, whatever. You just want it to be with you.
Yes.
Like, how do you disciple them to be able to have that experience apart from the structure or the sort of event that you've created?
That's great. And I think here's why, somebody's listening to this podcast and they're going to say, this is the 90-minute podcast. It's not supposed to be the 90-minute podcast. But so in the book, the book basically outlines that there are these micro disciplines that build to larger disciplines. One of them is the idea that church services, our Sunday gathering, should live within a clock, right? They should start at a certain time, on time, the same time, right? We don't push it back because we're waiting on the room to fill. We don't start it early. They should have a predictable, if you say our service starts at 10 a.m. on Sunday morning, it should start exactly at 10 a.m. Something should be happening on the main stage at 10 a.m. on that Sunday morning. And then if you say it's 90 minutes, it should end at 90 minutes. There shouldn't be we felt the presence of God, so we want an extra 30, right? Like people are building their life around the consistency of what you're doing. And so what I'm saying is when you say, hey, how do I create an ecosystem where people are desiring to meet God and community outside of Sunday morning, not build around a pastor or a personality? Well, don't try to tell them out loud, I'm not going to give you everything here. Hear me, it takes a little bit of humility here to say, I can't be the totality of what you experience of God. This is but one stop on your journey of faith. And so I'm going to give you exactly what Sunday is meant for, and that's inspiration and direction. And once I get that, I'm going to tell you, hey, the rest of your Christian walk is found in small groups. The rest of your Christian walk is found in discipleship classes or Bible study. The rest of your Christian walk is living this out in these other spaces because I'm not going to force it all to happen here. I think the idea that the pastor is called to disciple the whole church is antithetical to a growing disciple-making church, right? There's a limit. Jesus only discipled 12 people, and Jesus, I think if he was sitting in this room right now, he'd be like, hey, I'm flawless, and one of you was still crazy. And I don't think, I have yet to find a flawless pastor, and that's okay. Here we weren't not beating any of them up, but I don't think you should make yourself, I don't think any pastor should see themselves as, if I don't disciple these people, discipleship won't happen. So I go into these churches all the time, and I'm like, hey, what are you doing outside of Sunday? It's so crazy to me. They'll say, hey, we're not a Sunday-driven church. And I'll say, oh, what are you doing? Oh, we do Sunday, and I do Bible study on Wednesday. Who's teaching? Me. It's like, well, wait, you are a Sunday church. It's built around this singular personality, the singular revelation. And I would encourage any leader listening to adopt Jethro's advice to Moses. When Jethro says, hey, Moses, the way you're leading is not great. You're going to burn yourself out. You need to go and appoint other leaders so that they can attend to the tribe. And so, how do we get people to not build their entire discipleship identity around a Sunday morning? We've got to make sure that they understand that Sunday morning is just one part of their experience. And I find when I visit these churches, no one's saying that out loud. Let me say that. Very few churches are saying out loud, hey, I don't want this to be all of that. This cannot be the totality of your formulation. And here's the intentional other spaces we've created where that can happen.
Yeah, and I think using the platform of a large church with a staff to be able to help become a guide for these people, whether they've been believers for 20 years or they became a believer last Sunday, to go, here is your next step. And it's not just run to the connection booth in the lobby after service because we want to give you a Bible and a cool cup. It's how you continue to develop yourself and become more like Christ is through others, this is how we do it, through small groups, through blank, and all these other ministries, because churches can put those on and host those to become easier for people to join in. Because if it was on them to do it or them to start their own small group, it's probably not going to happen. So, just the ability to dive into that more. And man, I mean, we see all the time the whole Sunday conversation and Sundays are king versus, well, we're a conference-driven church. We do this and this and this and this, all throughout the year. And shaping the priorities of who are we actually trying to reach. It honestly, it goes back down to that like avatar and going, what is our ultimate goal? Because we can all have things that all point towards Jesus, but it's like, how do we laser focus on the thing that we feel like God is calling us to do in our church for our community today, and not just
that we have the ability to do.
Right.
Like, because if you have the skill set, the team, the creative passion, the right resources to accomplish something, it's like you were saying earlier, churches can have different aspects of what it looks like to do ministry or outreach or whatever that they're really good at, and not try to be something that they're not, and that's okay, and own that.
I talk to pastors, and so here's how the conversation typically goes. It goes, "Hey, pastor, I enjoyed service today. It was amazing." He's okay. Give me your honest feedback. Okay, you had like 16 announcements. You got 5 events coming up in the next 8 days. Are you expecting the people to be at all? So we get this larger conversation like you're doing too much. And then once I can kind of cajole them to, okay, we're doing too much. I hear you. The next question is so innocent and pure that it softens my heart again for the leader who really does feel called to the people, but is not thinking it like a CEO. I'm just trying to lead these people well. So then the next part of the conversation goes, okay, then what do we focus on, right? And I tell pastors all the time, the way to choose what to focus on, or even not just pastors, but executive pastors who I probably spend 70% of my time actually talking to, is choose the thing that your church gets supernatural results in and triple down on it, right? Sure. So in this avatar idea, in this where are we at in the kingdom of God, I believe, and this is me, Sheldon, being the spiritual one again, I believe God graces every leader for a specific challenge. And that's biblical, right? And Moses had his challenge, David has his. You can just go all the way up until Jesus and then Paul, right? And the disciples. Everyone gets there. Hey, what do I get supernatural results in? For some guys, that's leadership. Some guys, that's family. For some people, that's relationships. For some people, that's biblical work, like biblical understanding and knowledge transfer. It's like choose that thing and create. Now, hearing this through healthy whole ears, and create an ecosystem where your church delivers that better than anyone, and that will become the fuel to growth. Everyone is enamored. Everyone. You can't live in America and not be enamored by what's happening at 2819 in Atlanta. Cool, it's great. We love Pastor Philip Anthony Mitchell, whatever you think about the thing, whatever, it doesn't matter. But they chose their thing, and that is gospel-centered, New Testament, disciple-making talk, right? And we're not trying to be the flashy this church or this church. It's like, no, we're going to build an ecosystem. And it's so funny, whenever we have these culturally significant moments of church, think about the last 10 years. I won't start listing names because that'll show you who I pay attention to too well, and you'll get caught on that. But think about man, that church is doing something really cool. That church is, wow, that's wild. Man, how are they they're just choosing to do one thing over and over and over again. I say this all the time. When I'm talking to that pastor, I said, hey, so same conversation with that pastor. I said, let's take it out of church for just 1 second. Let's look at your favorite restaurants. If you're in a crunch and you got to get from church to your kid's baseball game, but you haven't eaten, where are you going? You're not going to Cheesecake Factory. You're going to Raising Cane's, Chipotle, or like Five Guys. Why? Because you need somebody to simplify your decision-making as fast as humanly possible. your desire for simplification around your hunger is not unspiritual, and it's not different from what people feel on a Sunday morning. Hey, what will this help me become? That's the thing I'm going to go to that church for. And so that's why you just triple down on that thing, and that's the thing that actually sparks the growth in your church. And so, it's fun having this conversation, because then they're like, wait, you're right. And somewhere along the leadership journey, they were told that they had to be all things to all people. And so they said, well, wait, I love teaching leadership, but people told me I was shallow. Or I love delving deep into scripture, but people said this is too deep and new believers won't. And I actually, I'm just going to be spiritual again. I think that's the tactic of the enemy, to come and separate, or, the Bible says that the enemy is here to cause confusion. That's confusion. It's being singular focus is a fruit of the Spirit. Like, we always think of the fruits of the Spirit as like, I grew up in a charismatic belief, so it's laying on the altar and crying and oil. It's like, no, it's self-control. Right? It's like, it's joy, it's peace, it's also self-control, and they're all in equal parts. And so I tell every leader, hey, Sheldon, how do I identify my unique proposition on this kingdom, within the kingdom of God, or within my city? Choose your one thing and build the church around that. Resist the urge to be everything to everyone, and eventually you will be able to serve as many people as you want, because you built, your singular base.
So, that's how I just believe, as we as believers have been given spiritual gifts from our Father, as going, man, what is, like, I just remember this in my 20s, just wrestling with, like, God, what is the call that you have on my life, and how in the world am I supposed to know? Because I like a lot of little things, but how do I focus in and dial in on the thing that, like, actually has impact? And, I remember this conversation that I had with Bob Goff in an airport in San Diego. Little flex. It was great. I remember standing behind him in TSA, and I was like, I think that's Bob Goff. He's wearing a Mickey Mouse watch and a Boston Red Sox hat. I know this is Bob Goff. He's super tall. And, he ended up talking a little bit about some of those things, and just like, man, understanding the call on your life. And, one of the things he said to me was like, the things that bring you joy, that bring, that you're good at, like, those are the things that God wants you to continue to pour into. And it's the same kind of context in a church ministry, to be able to go, here are the things that we have actually seen really great outcomes with. And I think churches look at that and go, okay, awesome, we figured that part out. We're going to go try to move on to this.
You don't get to move on to the next.
Instead of doubling down, because you're like, there's so many other things that we can do and try to affect everybody in this massive, whatever, 25-mile, 30-mile radius of your church. And it's just going, God gave the gifts of the people that are in the leadership, whether it's teaching, executive pastor, whatever, specific gifts. And so being able to double down on that, and to be okay with leaving the rest behind, and not, pursuing those things. And your example of 2819 is a perfect example of that. For years, those guys, trying to, I think, do a bunch of different things. And then
I think, and I'm not spoiling the story, just go Google it. 2819 is the newest invention of, that wasn't the original, you go read the story yourself. It's not the original name of the church. 2819 is when, I think, God whispered to Pastor Philip, hear me, I've just heard the story, and I've heard him teach, hey, focus on this. And when a person, that's the newest iteration, but guys, we can go through history and find great men of God, women of God who've done this. Hey, I'm just going to double down on my healing ministry, Catherine Kuhlman. I'm going to double down on my prophetic ministry. I'm going to double down on my leadership ministry, John Maxwell. And I'm just going to be that thing. That thing becomes the thing that ultimately gets them to the larger thing that they've been asking, that their ambition desires. And so I think, I say this to my clients all the time in churches I'm consulting. It's like, guys, the prophetic part of me says this next, everybody's like, Sheldon, what's happening in the church? And I don't know if this is God, but this is also study. Like, this is me seeing what's happening. I think we're entering into a season of radical simplicity. I think the church is, I don't want to say it's coming back to itself, because I think the church moves at the speed of like where the world is going. God is not singularly focused ever. He's incredibly in everything. But I say that to say there's a radical simplicity. I think there's a period in the last 10 years where we've just tried to be everything to everyone and have all the things. We want to have all the programming and the ministries, and we're taking this system and this system and this system. We're trying to hodgepodge them together to create a great church. And I think the churches that I'm seeing develop deeply, but also widely, right? They're also attractional, but there's depth to them. They're they're understimulating. You know, I don't even know if that's the right word. I guess you guys both work in the production space, so you understand what I mean. It's like I'm not trying to and it's not about the sound and the lights and the haze. I'm talking about like I'm trying to be incredibly myself. Authenticity is, I believe, a virtue of the Holy Spirit. So I'm trying to be deeply authentic, but I'm also trying to be singular. Like, hey, we do this here. And I'm going to do it really well. We're going to do it excellence. We're going to do it repetitively. And we're not trying to be the conference church meets the kids church meets the prophetic church meets the worship church. Like, I don't need to have, it's like, I'm just going to do my lane. And in doing my lane, which is so crazy. I don't know why I'm in this today, but that's what the Bible says. If you seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, meaning do the thing God put you on the earth to do, then the stuff, like, Sheldon, we want to do an album. We want to, like, hear me, I consult with those churches, right? I have clients who have full record labels in the church, right? But that came after a season of intense focus around one area. It wasn't we weren't trying to build a kids ministry, start a youth ministry, start a ministry school, and a record label all in the same 4 years. And I think the internet is tricking us because you look at those churches and you're like, man, they're doing it, we should do it. It's like, no, but you're not seeing the background of the years of consistency and financial stability that they've built in order to be able to launch those things. See, I just threw that one in there for free. Because all of it costs money and resources and stewardship. And so,
and I think as those churches grow and as, a church continues to grow and develop as they focus on a single thing, you're then able to bring in other leaders who can also do the same thing in different areas, but their only job is to focus on whether it's kids ministry, youth, young adults, whatever that looks like, to lead that in their space really, really well. And I just think, like, as church ministry staff, like, the such importance of not trying to be everything all at once. Because man, we've all been on staff with those churches, and it's all for good reason. Like, it's all like in the,
let's be clear.
It's all like, because man, we are deeply trying to reach our community, but by us spreading all of the things we do so thin, we're the percentage of exactly. And
that feels like a segue, because one of the things I wanted to get back to in your church audit theme, right? The things that you brought up so far are sort of programmatic issues, right? Like the way that the gathering is communicating to the people that have come, right? Maybe flip it a little bit and talk about not the things that the congregation is going to experience, but when you do the audits and you see behind the scenes, you show up for rehearsal, you show up for volunteer prayer circle, you show up for whatever. Nobody's in the room yet. This is just the team that's doing the work behind the scenes. I imagine you observe trends there as well, right? So talk about that.
When I go to these churches, they're like, hey, what do you want Sunday to look like? I said, I want to get there when the team arrives, not when service starts, right? Because Sunday, what we see on Sunday from, service starts at 10, what you see from 10 to 12, let's just say it's a 2-hour service. I don't know who's listening, but cut that back. What you see from 10 to 12 is ultimately the overflow of the week, right? Preachers would tell you the preaching is 10% of my job, right? The other 90% is staff and budgets and buildings and facilities and marriage and all the other stuff. So I said that to say, I like to arrive early, because there is the crystallization of your church's culture. What happens between sound call time and 10 a.m. tells me what you believe about people, what you believe about structure, what systems are actually real in your church. It also tells me who the real leaders are versus the people who have titles, right? Yes. If they're writing the titles in the green room and the people who are in the lobby in the parking lot are fixing things or hanging the flags or mopping, that's, what I'm saying? Like, you got the title, that's great, but these are the people leading your church, right? And so I observe, I'm not stealthy at all. So usually people are like, what's that guy doing sitting in the corner? But I'm like just observing, and what I'm, and this is the conversation I love having with the pastor, because watch this, most pastors, we'll talk about why later, it's a different podcast. Most pastors are in the building, even in a 100-member church. They're in the building, they're in their office, they're prepping, they're in their, in what I call game day mode. So they're like in the locker room, listening to DMX, getting ready for Jesus. Okay, got it. And then they come out when worship starts. They don't see the interpersonal conflict happening in the lobby. They don't see the two parking guys disagreeing about where to put the cones. They don't hear the worship leader saying something strong to the MD. They just assume it's all working. And so I'm looking at this and I'm like, okay. So when I sit down with them, I'm like, hey, okay, this is where your systems are flawed. I think this is the version of church you think you have, because you're seeing what I find is most churches can put on a pretty nice production, right? Like even like an average size church can get to a good, like, okay, we're gonna be on our best behavior from 10 to 12. Right. What are you at? What are you from 8:30 to 12 and from 8:30 to 10 and then from 12 to like, Monday morning. And so I love watching the formulation of leadership and organization in the pre-service hour. Obviously, everyone listening to this conversation can hear, I have a disproportionate desire to see Sundays, because I think the podcast is talking about Sundays coming. It comes every 7 days. It is God's heartbeat, like the rhythm of a heart. Every time it pumps, it's moving blood from one side of your body to the other. Sunday is the church's heartbeat. We are moving people from experiencing God to being in relationship with the community. And it happens literally in a rhythm every 7 days. And so I use Sunday, that's why the book is called Sunday by Design, because it starts with this idea that if Sunday's not great, if Sunday has no order to it, if Sunday has no systemization to it, you're not going to be organized on Tuesday. You're not going to be organized on Thursday. And so I come to these churches, back to your point. I come to these churches, I get there early and I'm watching the volunteer teams. And I say all the time, the culture of your church is what happens when the leader's not in the room. Hey, Sheldon, our church culture is great. Okay, let's evacuate the leaders out of the room. Let's see what happens naturally. That is wherever that falls to, how people talk to each other, how they reflect to each other, the level of excellence they have behind what they're doing, the clarity in which they're leading, that is your culture. And so that's ultimately what I'm observing and bringing back to the pastor of, hey, I think you think your culture is this. And what I'm experiencing is this, this, and this, or I saw this, this, and this. And I'm not trying to change your culture. I'm just trying to highlight that there's discrepancy between what's on your website and your culture guide and what I'm experiencing in the conversations with the people. Transparently, my favorite is I'll pull up to the kids volunteer or one of the kids leaders and like, hey, how's kids? I'm Sheldon visiting. I'm here to just check out the church. And your pastor asked me just to take a look around and see things. How's kids? Oh, it's really good. Within like 30 seconds I hear, we don't have enough teachers and I'm the only one in here. It's like, okay, and I don't know how else a pastor would hear that, because most people aren't going to go to the pastor and say it. Well, a lot of people will. Never mind. What am I saying? A lot of people will. Pastor's like, yes, they will. But no, I love having that conversation to say the real leadership work of ministry is not in the presentation of the gospel. That's the finalization of it all. The real work is what's happening within our volunteer teams and our leaders and our staff. I know some people listening is like, I don't have staff. Well, treat your volunteers like staff. We can get to that later. But the idea is that's where I'm finding the crystallization, and I'm able to talk about I see that moment, those morning moments show me all of it. It shows me your leadership structure, shows me who's in charge, what systems you're running. Like a sound check will tell you everything you need to know about the excellence of a music ministry, right? It's like, did it start on time? Did ear checks happen? Are we stopping down mid-song to fix harmony parts? It's like, okay, so you clearly didn't rehearse this week, or no one practiced before they got, you know what I'm saying? It's like, or you see that one bass player so locked into the chord chart, he doesn't even see the 17 other things happening around him because he didn't practice. Like it's all a tell to what you do throughout the week. And that's why the whole thesis behind the book is great Sundays are not stumbled into, they're designed. And great churches who are missional, who are healthy, who are growing, don't haphazardly step into Sunday. They design Sunday, Monday through Saturday. And when they step into Sunday, Sunday should feel planned and spiritual at the same time. Meaning we planned to encounter the Spirit. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't just we just jumped into this thing.
Interesting. I think it feels planned to the people that have the responsibility of delivering it, but actually to the people that are experiencing it, it feels completely natural.
Completely natural.
And I don't mean natural in the sense of they think it was planned, or that they think it was. They're looking at it and they're thinking that was really planned, or that was really spontaneous. They don't think about it at all.
They're just experiencing it. You don't know what was spontaneous at Disney. Right. You don't know that Mickey wasn't supposed to be there, but you just have and I think a lot of us, we lead because we're so close to the thing, we assume everyone feels this. Right. And that is the burden of leadership is to say 98% of people are going to miss 70% of what we're talking about, which is hence why I say it's totally circular conversation. Like if you have a clear next step, it's not, you don't just say the first step one time. You have to say it 4 or 5, maybe even 6 times in that same service because no one's listening to everything. No one's seeing everything. You're like, man, those 3 light fixtures didn't move on cue. And it's like, nope. The LD and the one guy are the only 2 people in the whole, maybe the pastor, because he sees everything. That was a joke. But they see it. But Crystal and Kevin and their 2 kids who walked into church after a week of baseball and work, they're just like, man, this is cool. I love it here. The presence of God is here. And we're obsessing over like, man, this feels too scripted. It's like, no, that's exactly, that's just you because you're in it. You know what I'm saying? That's like a chef saying this tastes the same all the time. Yes, that's why they're here. That's why they came to eat it. Like it tastes the same. That's what we want.
All right.
Y'all see I like a good food analogy. I notice I will bring this back to a food analogy.
So like practically, like, it's interesting because I think like as you're describing hey, you're here on a Sunday morning, you're watching all of these other ministries get ready for that. Senior pastors in his office, game day, locker room, all of that. I love that. And then, his perspective of what's actually happening, just like you were saying, like walk out, everything seems fine to me.
It's great.
Like, and then when you share those things, like practically, how do you even either word that to the senior pastor, to the senior leaders, and how do they actually go about helping to fix that? Because ultimately, they still are like, well, I still got to prep my message, and I can't babysit the worship pastor and the MD from yelling at each other, in rehearsal or whatever that looks like, and I'm sure that is also many times defeating for them because they may not ever know that, or people are too nervous to tell them that there's some interpersonal conflicts on their staff, and all of those things. So just think like practically,
really good.
How do they kind of move into a more healthy place from that?
And when I have that conversation, I'm always super sensitive to not cast blame, right? I don't. That's another conversation, but I'm never. It's never an accusatory. Hey, your staff culture or your leadership culture is horrible. And here's all the reasons. No. It's hey. Here's maybe some things you don't know that your kids are doing when you leave to go to work. It's one of those, right? And here's the crazy part of it all the time. Very rarely are they shocked. I think this idea that the pastor's aloof and doesn't know what's going on is a misnomer. Like they know exactly what's going on because people love to talk.
Yes.
Like, hey, pastor, did you hear? Whatever. The staff, the leaders, whatever. Very rarely what I am doing is really confirming and maybe prioritizing the gravity of it. It's like, hey, I knew my worship leader, my MD, I knew they had some quiet beef. But I'm like, hey, pastor, from the outside, I don't know these people. And if I was able to, if it was palpable to me, maybe it's not as underlying as you think it is. And so I typically, everyone says, Sheldon will come, he'll do the audit. And by the way, I put all this in writing. So it's not like, so he gets to like, I call it his like armor. He gets to slide this piece of paper. It's like, hey, we had a consultant in this week. Here's what they noticed. And he can like, it's like, you really blame it on me, baby. I love it. Like I am a target. That's that's what you pay me for. I love doing it. But ultimately, my prescription for every pastor who experiences this is to reevaluate. And when I say reevaluate, I don't mean terminate or reassign. I'm saying reevaluate who those key leaders are, and don't go fix the symptom. Start with the problem. The problem is typically a lack of leadership development in one of those areas. So let's just go back to the worship leader MD conversation. I'm not going to go and have a whole worship team meeting, right? As the pastor, I'm like, hey, that's going to stress you out. That's going to introduce a whole lot of emotion, a whole lot of sideways energy. But let's talk about how do we start to develop the leaders of the worship ministry, be it the MD and the worship leader and the production director, typically those three, I call it the three musketeers of worship. Let's put them in a room and let's talk about healthy communication, what the expectation is, how do we solve, and what's the issue here? Like, is it a power issue? Is it a control issue? Is it a pride issue? Let's get into that. Hear me. I think all of us know exactly what those conversations sound like. Everyone listens like, yep, I know exactly where that's at. I'm dealing with it right now. And so my thought is to them, I say, I prioritize the urgency of what I'm hearing or seeing. And very rarely is it like egregious, but it is palpable. Like, okay, they clearly have some beef somewhere. And then, watch this, after dealing with the people and identifying that there's a resolution, I think it's the pastor and the leadership's job to build a system around the resolution, not assume that people are going to self-solve. Very rarely do people self-solve, right? And so, for instance, if I'm in the conversation with the MD and the worship leader, hey, I'm not getting the conversation happening early enough in the week. I'm finding out on Friday night and Saturday, so I'm fixing tracks or whatever it is, right? And it's like, okay, now the new system is, hey, service is completely locked by Tuesday. Set list is communicated. Let's do one better. Service, we've planned next week's service this week. So we're full 14 days out. You should have all the chord charts, the progressions of the song, who's going to say what, who's doing what. So then when you're building out your Ableton track, you're not in the dark. And barring, and here's what I tell everybody, barring, the prophetic voice of God or some big pivot to the service or something we need to address, we're going to lock into that service and I'm not going to mess with it. When we get to Sunday morning sound check, that I'm giving you my word as a worship leader, to the MD, we're locking. That's the system now. We don't deviate from it. Again, so now when I come in, from the outside, I can say, oh yeah, there's a system. They knew clearly I got a bass player who's looking at the room. I got singers who aren't holding their ear, trying to see if they're singing the alto or harmony part, right? I can hear all the transitions happening because I know you somewhere practiced it leading into this. And so, yeah, I tell pastors, don't go try to put out the fires, because I'm gonna highlight some fires, I'm gonna highlight some issues. Don't go deal with that. If we don't, every pastor has to see himself, and this is where the coaching part of my work comes in, has to see themselves as the chief people development officer, not the systems designer or crises, right? You only can grow the church through the leaders that you're developing. Everybody's like, Sheldon, what's the key to church growth? Church growth, developing leaders. There's literally no other methodology. Marketing doesn't fix it. Great production doesn't fix it. They're all accessories to it. But if you're not developing people, you're actually not doing the work of the kingdom. And so, yeah, I say to them, don't get overwhelmed. Don't freak out. I'm going to highlight some things that are going to probably confirm some things you already felt. I'm going to prioritize those for you, so you don't feel like you have to go solve them all. And then my suggestion to you is switch into development mode. Hey, and a lot of times for me, that sounds like like cheering the pastor on to go have some healthy confrontation. It's like, hey, you got to go confront that, because the culture you want is on the other side of that confrontation. Yes. And if you're unwilling to confront it, I'd say this all the time. Your church has two cultures. It has the culture you put on the wall, and it has the culture you refuse to correct. That's the only two. Like in most cultures fail because of a lack of confrontation. Hey, we love you, but we don't do that here. You know what I'm saying? Like we have a methodology or preference for how we do that. And most pastors, you already know, they do it all the time, so they kind of give up. Like they just concede to it. Like, no, it's fine. There are other problems I need to deal with this week. And I tell leaders, especially executive pastors, number 2, second seat leaders, I call them, is your job is to protect the culture. It's to constantly bring healthy correction to the people, to say, hey, this is Aaron, right? This is where Aaron went wrong with Moses, because the people brought their problems to Aaron, and Aaron's like, well, you're right. Let's put an idol in the middle of the camp. Don't do Aaron, right? The idea is be more like Joseph, and that is to push back against the complaint. Say, no, there's a way forward, and here's what it should look like. So,
because man, it's easy. Like especially as the church staff gets larger and those positions in leadership become just higher up in the org chart, and they have more people underneath them, whether it's a senior leader, executive pastor, senior pastor, not wanting to confront their worship pastor because they go, man, we just got this guy 3 years ago and it took us 2 years to find him. I don't have 2 years. I can't go 2 years without this guy. And so I'm just going to kind of shove his kind of crappy attitude sometimes under the rug because, well, he's still here and the Sunday experience is still good, but and
I would argue with him, it's not as good as it's supposed to be, because I think don't make me quote the author, it'll hit me later, but culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? Culture is ultimately more important than the systems. And so if we have to be disproportionately excited about culture making. And everybody hears these conversations. This is my job here. I'm switching into work mode. Everybody hears the word culture. Let me just define it so that all the listeners are like, okay, we know what he says when he called it culture. It is our actions, convictions, language, and celebrations that identify we belong together, right? I walked into the studio, there's a culture here. There's a way you guys talk to each other. There's a way you behaved with each other. This is a coffee drinking house, in case you didn't realize. Everybody's got there's a culture to how we exist, and that has to be described, and watch this, it has to be taught. And so when we say the culture here is not healthy, it's not that there's some malignant issue, it's just ignorance. People don't know. So culture technically can't be unhealthy, it's just unknown, right? It's just, well, I guess you could say the unhealthy is the fact that it's unknown. So our job as leaders is to continuously say, hey, here's how we do it here. Here's our preference for how we believe people should be led and talked to. And there's a way that I do it. And watch this. If it's not modeled by the leader, it can't be duplicated in the people following, right? And so when I go into these churches, so watch this. Same analogy. Let's stay in the analogy. I got a worship leader and an MD beefing, and they're not talking to each other great. And then if I stay long enough, if I spend the night and come to the office on Monday, I find that strong talking or disagreeing is kind of the culture of the house. That's how the pastor talks to the executive pastor. And so, and just like in your house, your kids mimic
Of course.
Your parents. They're just doing, hey,
yes.
People don't do what you say, they do what you do, right? And so, so again, there's no unhealthy culture. I call it unlearned culture or untaught culture, because all it really is I'm just doing what I'm seeing.
Well, it's clashing cultures.
Clashing
Everyone's
cultures.
bringing their own culture
Their
from where
own
they
childhood.
came from before,
Yeah, 100%.
right? So we all
100%.
are carrying that, and it's like, well, something's got to give if we're going to unite into one culture, right?
Absolutely.
So,
But yeah, I think like so you go back to your question, your original question is, what are you telling pastors? It is not to go solve all the problems. It's to identify which ones need to make the biggest change and then switch into development and culture management. Hey, here's how I want that to happen here. Here's my preference for how that's not, and that's got to be a senior leader conversation. And so I'm like in the back with the pastor, like, no, you got to go out there and we got to get them in a room. And, I'm like Don King in Mike Tyson's ear, like, you're going to go out there and you're going to hit them back. No, I'm joking. Some leaders just like, yes, that's exactly what I want to do. I want to hear that. That's what they want to hear.
Well, I just think like, it goes back to what you're saying of just like telling people over and over and over again and over explaining to the point where you're like, I've said this so many times.
And
everybody should know this.
Right there is when people start listening. Right when you have the feeling as a leader that, man, I feel like I am an absolute broken record.
Yes.
That's literally the moment most people are like, wait, did you just say that for the first time?
Yep.
It's like, no, I've said this for 6 years straight. We finally got it. We finally got it.
But, having the ability to just communicate that over and over and over again is what keeps culture. It's what starts culture. And, we say all the time, even here, like every time we hire a new person, the culture changes. And it's easy as an organization grows to have culture drift to whatever the new, 30 new staff members over the last 3 years that join the team. And now we're all of a sudden over here. And it is a constant shift to go, no. This is where we feel like God is leading us and what He's called us to do. And anything outside of that is confusion. It's can wreak havoc on the staff and what that Sunday experience looks like. And so,
just to make sure that this conversation, people don't feel like we switch conversations. We're still having the same conversation. And I always think of these conversations as like, if I'm listening to this, draw the two together. The first part of this conversation was, hey, pick a singular focus. Get, for a season of your ministry, get to your first love, the thing that you get supernatural results when you do. We ended up in the second half of this because the execution of that is to build a culture that accomplishes that thing, right? So these are not two separate conversations. One is the why, the culture is the how, right? It's how do we get to, hey, if we're a house that is deeply around family, right? We're going to be a family church. We just feel called to help families be healthy and multi-generational ministry. Great. The culture of that then has to be built in such a way that it supports that outcome, right? So we have to think intergenerationally. We have to be aware of, the fact that we have multiple age groups happening in a room, or we always have to have, like, if we're going to call a Wednesday night thing, there's got to be something happening in the kids' space. Like, the culture is defined by what we're trying to accomplish. And I think these are not two separate conversations. So when the pastor's like, hey, Sheldon, come tell me about what you saw, I'm saying, okay, what are you trying to accomplish? Okay, well, then there's cultural mismatches here that aren't going to allow you to get there. And let's, if you're like, we're a presence house, but your worship leader and your MD don't like each other, you're not a presence house. Like, not yet. You will be once they start getting along, because obviously they're going to have some, you know what I'm saying? So totally, the culture war you're fighting is not just random. It's the ones that's impeding you becoming the thing God called you to be. So stop trying to, I tell pastors all the time, stop trying to fight every battle. Like, only fight the battles that are mission critical. Hey, that is stopping me from getting 40 more families in the church. So I got to go fix the dysfunction in the kids ministry right now. I don't need to go necessarily work on the parking lot. The parking lot will self-solve itself once I get this part figured out. And a lot of leaders are trying to fix everything. And you all have heard this adage, if everything is important, nothing is important. So it's like, hey, just focus on the single thing. If you take nothing else from this conversation today, it's to say there is a spiritual calling to singular focusing. And it's actually stewardship. It is not mismanagement to say, man, I have so many, you said it, I have so many other things I'm good at, and so many other things I want to do. That's the beauty of God. He can equip you in a bunch of areas, but it doesn't change the thing He's called you. He's called you to be.
I love that. I love that.
So
You've mentioned it a couple times around the book that you've worked on.
Yeah.
That's kind of on the horizon, right?
It
So
is.
maybe let's land there and
That's
unpack
great.
that a little bit. Say a little bit more about what that is. What's your goal writing that?
Yeah.
What's the outcomes that you hope people get when they engage?
It's so funny. You guys kind of, I don't know if we did this on purpose, but I appreciate it. The idea behind the book is to say, when I go into churches, which everyone probably has heard me say this, I'm in almost a different church every weekend, kind of like you guys, seeing, listening, learning, talking, coaching, and consulting. I'm noticing the same patterns. And so if you're familiar with the idea of an atomic habit, or even Dave Ramsey's baby steps, Total Money Makeover, what are the key ingredients that define a church that's growing, right? And these 7 things, I call them these 7 switches or 7 habits or 7 mentalities. These 7 things, they sound super simple on the surface. They're like, yeah, well, Sheldon, that makes perfect sense. But then when you start to delve into them, they're actually larger, more significant muscles that I think churches have to have in order to put themselves into a position of growth. I won't go through every one of them in detail, but I'll give you the 7 real quick, just so you have them first, is that every growing church has a locked service format. How do we gather on Sundays? It's so crazy. Our Catholic brothers and sisters and our more, the word I'm looking for, our more liturgical brothers and sisters, they've done this for centuries, right? And the new non-denominational church is like, no, we're just going to do whatever. It's like there's actually a biblical worldview around the order of the gathering, right? And the Bible's incredibly replete on this. So we have a locked service format. 2, growing churches live within a clock. The clock is not antithetical to the Spirit. It's an acknowledgement, like you said, like one of the Kaleb said. It is an acknowledgement that people are living real lives, and the church should be a value added to them. It should never be endured. It should always be enjoyed. And so growing churches live in the clock. Growing churches pay an inordinate amount of time. I call it, they script the first 5 minutes, which means they care about the first impression. They know what's going to happen to you when you step onto the campus and into the room. 4th, a growing church has a system to capture every guest. So if it's your first time visiting or your second time visiting, we know how to get to you, and we make that super clear. 5, and we talked about this a little bit, it has one clear ask. After you give your life to Jesus, which we're going to ask you every Sunday, by the way, what's our one thing we want you to do? What's the clear next step? What's the obvious front door of our church that allows you to say, hey, I believe this is a place God has called me to be, and I'm ready to take that journey alongside you? 6, a growing church follows up within 24 hours, which means they have a culture of responsiveness, right? And again, it sounds super simple. We'll follow up in 24 hours, but that muscle is built through your desire to see that God is not sending you people to neglect. And if you don't have the desire or urgency to meet the moment of someone's decision with action and with like, hey, we're so happy you made that decision, I don't think you're really excited about growing your church or making disciples. And then 7, growing churches count. They count everything. They count people, they count kids, they count the number of cars, they count the number of salvations, the number of next steps, the number of baptisms, because every number represents a story. I like the way one pastor said it. I count people because people count. And how do I know what God has entrusted to me unless I judiciously understand? That's why in the Bible says the shepherd leaves the 99 for the one. Well, how did he know there was 100? Because he stood in the field throughout the day and ensured that all 100 of them were always accounted for. And I think growing churches have a desire to use not just, and watch this, remember I said all these sound simple, but growing churches use metrics to inform their decisions more than they use feelings, and you don't get metrics without counting. So 7 small micro strengths that I think, if laddered together, create an overwhelming desire or an overwhelming momentum, growth and habit. And I said, when I kind of gave the bio, when I got to Maryland and I stepped into this machine of a church, and again, PhD level, right? So I'm thinking that churches like this there's just something crazy about them, something you can't trace. Hear me, there's a lot of Holy Spirit involved, but then you start to look at them in their absolute most simplest form. It's doing those 7 things across multiple rooms, across multiple services, and developing the desire to have all 7 of those things present within their leadership team and their volunteer team. And so the book is ultimately my desire to say, hey, if you're going to grow your church, there are 7 simple disciplines that you're gonna have to get really comfortable within, because those 7 disciplines ladder into larger, more significant understandings. And without them, your church will grow and you'll mismanage the growth. You know what I'm saying? Like without those 7 things, without the ability to count, without the ability to start and end on time, or without the ability to respond quickly, God, you can swell really quickly, and then you'll look back in 2 months, 8 months, 2 years, and be like, where did all those people go? Yeah. Just 7. It's called Sunday by Design. The system behind growing churches. And it's just these 7 micro strategies, 7 atomic habits that that I've studied now that churches are employing to experience that level of growth.
And you mentioned, I think before we started, pre-orders are...
They're on.
when?
You can start. If you're watching this right now, they're probably live. You can go to sundaybydesign.com and check out that. Join the community. There's a bunch of pastors who are like actively... we're working all together to like implement this in their church. And again, a lot of pastors are like, no, we start on time, but I certainly don't know what's happening in the first 5 minutes of my church service, right? So it's like, okay, let's fix that, because if you're not intentional there, we'll look back 6 months, 8 months, or in different rooms, and you'll find they're chaotic. And so let's get that. Like, so we're just working through that together as a community. And it's my way of trying to help as many churches, kind of like you guys. Like, I just want to help as many churches as humanly possible.
That's awesome. We will we'll link that in the show notes for people to check out. But dude, thank you for your time, man. Oh my gosh.
I was promised Garrett's popcorn. I'm in Chicago.
You have to, dude.
Hey. Is that like the most touristy thing ever? It's like, what, Garrett's?
But here's the thing, everything that becomes touristy becomes touristy for a reason.
It's got to be, listen, I'm in Chicago.
I don't know if I've actually been to a physical Garrett's. I've been in Nuts on Clark.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so Garrett's in a deep dish. It's going to happen.
Oh, yes, dude.
Yep. I mean, they have it in the airport, so.
They do.
Really?
Garrett's.
Oh yeah. So
dude, I see that
last
line.
minute, Garrett's on the plane.
This bag when I land.
People are walking around with popcorn tins.
Oh, yes. That's crazy. Okay, say less. Done.
Yeah.
Consider it done.
Absolutely.
TSA, don't worry about me.
Yeah, dude.
Well, cool. Well, we mentioned the book, of course. If people want to just keep an eye on what you're doing or follow up or are curious about,
man,
where
follow
you're
me
at.
on Instagram. That's where all the fun happens. Where I get to post all these hot takes at SJ Andrus, and would love to connect. DM me. I'm not a weird person. AI does not run my account. I'm a real human being, and I read almost everything.
That's awesome.
I'm a millennial, so I would love to connect. Certainly cheering anyone who's listening to this conversation and is leading in ministry and is just trying to find the next breakthrough, next system, next strategy. I would love to connect, just talk, and learn your story.
I love that,
so
man.
much. Appreciate you being here.
Honor. Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah. Cool. For those of you all listening, we will see you next time, and please don't forget to look in the show notes for those links. And dude, thank you again, man. I appreciate it, and I think God is just blessing your ministry and you and the things that you are doing to help the local church reach more people. And so I'm thankful for that in your time today. And
thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, man. All right, guys. We'll see you all next week. Well, actually, not next week. Later, whenever it is. I don't know, whenever the next one comes out. But see you later.